She's shy around strangers, the man said smoothly, tightening his grip on the little girl's shoulder. His tone was casual, almost affectionate, but there was something unnatural in the way his fingers pressed into her skin. The girl winced, her small frame rigid, her lips trembling but silent. "Aren't you Sophie?" he asked, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Staff Sergeant Roderick Vale, stationed at the edge of the courtyard, didn't move at first. To an untrained observer, it was an innocent moment, a guardian with a child, hesitant in a crowd. But Vale's instincts, sharpened by years of training and battlefield experience, stirred uneasily. Something about the interaction didn't fit. And then it happened. The child's gaze rose, locking directly onto Vale's eyes across the throng of tourists. It was not the gaze of a frightened stranger seeking comfort. It was deliberate, urgent. Her tiny hand twitched in a subtle gesture, 3 fingers bent in, thumb across the palm. Index finger straightened, a silent signal. Every trained guardian knew it. A warning born from centuries of protocol. I am in danger. I am not safe. Vale's chest tightened. His duty, his oath, his very role as a royal guardian demanded restraint. Centuries of tradition dictated that such signals were to be reported, not acted upon directly. To intervene without command was to risk disgrace, dismissal, or worse. The protocols existed for a reason, to prevent panic, to maintain order, to trust the chain of command. But Vale was not a man of rules alone. He was a soldier who had buried too many regrets already. He saw the faint bruise peeking from under the child's sleeve. He noticed the way her silence screamed louder than any cry for help, and in her eyes, wide and glistening under the sun, he read the unspoken truth. Help me. Now. In that instant, instinct crushed tradition. Vale moved, the crowd barely registered. It at first, the sharp stride of a soldier breaking formation. Cameras clicked as tourists turned, curious about the sudden movement of a man in uniform. The man holding the girl stiffened, his smile faltering as Vale approached, every step deliberate and unwavering. "What's the meaning of this?" the man demanded, tightening his grip on the child as Vale stopped a few feet away. His voice carried a forced authority, the kind used to mask fear. "She's with me. You're frightening her." Vale's gaze didn't leave the girl. "Is that true?" he asked quietly, his voice steady. The girl didn't speak. She didn't need to. She repeated the hand signal, this time lower, almost hidden from the crowd, but visible enough for Vale's trained eyes. Her small body trembled, her lips pressed shut against words she dared not release. A hush fell over the courtyard. Tourists paused, sensing tension. Cameras turned away from the statues and fountains, lenses focusing instead on the brewing confrontation. The heat of the sun bore down, but the air grew cold with anticipation. "Let her go," Vale said finally. His words were simple, but the authority behind them cut through the noise of the courtyard. The man's jaw tightened. "I told you she's shy around strangers. You're scaring her." "Then she won't mind stepping over here," Vale replied, his voice like steel. The man hesitated, and in that hesitation Vale saw the truth. A real guardian would have reassured the child, loosened his grip, allowed her to move freely. But this man clutched her tighter, his knuckles whitening. His mask of confidence was cracking, piece by piece, under the weight of scrutiny. Tourists began to murmur. Some raised phones to record, their whispers weaving through the courtyard like wildfire. What had begun as a private standoff was now unfolding in the full glare of public attention. "Step back, soldier," the man growled, his voice low and venomous. "You don't know what you're doing." But Vale knew exactly what he was doing. He was breaking centuries of protocol to protect one frightened child. He was trading tradition for instinct, order for justice. And he would not stop. With a sudden decisive motion, Vale reached forward, his hand clamping down on the man's wrist. The grip was firm, unyielding. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The man snarled, twisting, but Vale's strength was immovable. "Let her go!" The man's mask shattered. Desperation flared in his eyes as he yanked against Vale's hold. But the soldier was trained, disciplined, unrelenting. With a sharp twist, Vale pried the man's hand away, pulling the girl safely into his own arms. She clung to him instantly, burying her face in his chest, her small body shaking with silent sobs. The courtyard erupted. Tourists shouted. Cameras flashed. Guards from nearby posts rushed forward, confusion etched on their faces. The man stumbled, back fury blazing in his eyes. "You don't understand," he spat. "You have no idea what you've done." Vale didn't flinch. He held the girl tightly, his protective stance shielding her from every angle. "I know exactly what I've done," he said, his voice carrying over the chaos. "I listened." The man's words turned to threats, but Vale no longer heard them. He felt the child's heartbeat pounding against his chest, each beat a reminder of why he had broken protocol. He had chosen humanity over history, compassion over command. And though the confrontation in the courtyard would soon spiral into investigations, accusations, and political storms, one truth would remain unshaken. On that blazing summer day, in front of tourists and flashing cameras, Staff Sergeant Roderick Vale had seen the signal no guardian could ignore, and he had acted. Centuries of silence were broken, and nothing would ever be the same again. The marble courtyard shimmered under the noon sun, its heat bouncing off white stone like waves from a furnace. Families milled about, snapping photos in front of the ornate palace gates, their voices weaving a tapestry of idle conversation. Yet in the middle of that ordinary hum of life, something sinister unfolded. The man's grip on the child's shoulder had shifted. It was no longer the feigned grasp of a protective guardian. It had hardened into the iron clutch of a captor. He dragged her toward the gates with a force that betrayed his desperation. His jaw clenched, his eyes darted. He was unraveling, and anyone truly watching could see it. The little girl stumbled, her small shoes scraping against the hot stone. She dared a glance backward, her wide eyes finding Staff Sergeant Roderick Vale once again, and then, without hesitation, her hand lifted, trembling yet unmistakable. The signal. That universal cry for help no words could equal. Vale's chest constricted. His training screamed for restraint, for protocol. But protocol had already shattered. He had crossed the line once. Now there was no turning back. His boots thundered against the courtyard stone as he broke formation. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Guards didn't abandon their posts, not unless something had gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. "Release her." Vale's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. It carried over the crowd like a blade slicing through silk. Heads turned. Cameras lifted. The tourists, once idly enjoying the palace's beauty, now bore witness to a moment that would be recorded, debated, and replayed endlessly in the days to come. The man stiffened, his grip tightening until the child whimpered. He tried to keep walking, tried to mask his urgency with authority, but Vale's tone had shattered the illusion. "Stand back," the man barked, spinning halfway, dragging the girl closer against him. His eyes gleamed with fury. "She's mine," the crowd gasped. Some mothers instinctively pulled their children closer. Vale's hand dropped instinctively to his ceremonial blade, not sharpened like the battlefield steel he once carried, but heavy enough to be wielded as a weapon. His every nerve sharpened into soldiers' focus. Security converged from the periphery, their radios crackling, but Vale was already moving. The child's voice finally cracked the silence. "My name's not Sophie," she cried, her voice raw and breaking. "I'm Lily Bennett." The courtyard froze. That name, every ear in range recognized it. Posters had papered the city for weeks, her face broadcast on television, her parents pleading for her safe return. She'd been missing for 3 weeks, and here she was, clutched in the arms of a predator. Chaos erupted. Witnesses shouted, some screamed, phones rose high, recording every desperate second. Uniformed guards shouted conflicting orders, torn between protocol and the undeniable reality unraveling before them. The man cursed, his mask fully shattered. Desperation flared in his eyes. He shoved Lily forward suddenly, then yanked her back. Against him, his hand clamping across her mouth. The move was violent, erratic, No guardian, no caretaker would act this way. Vale's instincts exploded through the thin fabric of ceremony. He lunged. The crowd scattered like startled birds as Vale closed the distance, his red coat blazing in the sun, his boots pounding out. A relentless rhythm. The predator swung wildly, pulling Lily to the side as a living shield, his other hand reaching for a concealed blade at his waist. Steel flashed. Vale didn't hesitate. Training took over. His forearm snapped up, deflecting the slash meant for his chest. Pain seared as the blade grazed his skin, slicing through the rich fabric of his coat. The brilliant red deepened, stained darker by his own blood. But Vale pressed forward. His fist drove into the man's ribs, forcing him to stagger back. The girl screamed, writhing in the captor's grip. The courtyard dissolved into a blur of chaos. Guards shouting, tourists scattering, cameras capturing every blurred second of violence. But for Vale, the world had narrowed to a single focus. "Protect the child!" The predator lashed out again, his blade carving arcs through the air. Vale caught the strike, twisting the man's wrist until the knife clattered to the stones. In the same motion, he wrenched Lily free, pulling her behind. "Him! Run!" Vale barked, shoving her toward the nearest cluster of security officers. But the predator wasn't finished. With a roar, he lunged barehanded, teeth bared, driven by the madness of a cornered animal. His nails clawed at Vale's uniform, his fists hammering. Vale met him head-on. His ceremonial training dissolved. This was no parade ground. This was war again. The battlefield come roaring back. His fists, his knees, his shoulders, all became weapons in the brutal clash. The fight was savage, short, and bloody. When it ended, the predator lay face down on the stone, Vale's knee driven into his back, his hands bound by a guard's cuffs. Blood dripped from Vale's arm, soaking his crimson coat until ceremony and sacrifice were indistinguishable. The crowd erupted into cheers, sobs, and frantic conversation. Some guards moved Lily to safety, wrapping her in protective arms, shielding her from the press of cameras. Others secured the predator, dragging him away as he spat curses and threats. And amid it all, Vale stood motionless for a moment, his chest heaving, his gaze fixed on the girl. She looked back at him, her tear-streaked face trembling with both fear and relief. For the first time since he had seen her, she smiled, a faint, fragile smile that said everything words could not. "Thank you," she whispered. Those two words cut deeper than any wound. Vale had broken protocol. He had stained the honor of his post with blood. He had stepped outside centuries of rigid tradition, but none of it mattered. He had chosen instinct over silence, humanity over ceremony. The cameras had captured everything. The world would see. Investigations would come. Tribunals would question his every choice. But in that moment, as the palace courtyard settled into uneasy calm, one truth remained unshaken. A little girl was alive, and Staff Sergeant Roderick Vale had made sure of it. The wail of sirens split the air, their echoes bouncing off the marble walls of the palace courtyard. Within moments, blue and white police vehicles screeched to a halt outside the gates, their doors flung open as uniformed officers surged forward. The predator, bloodied and pinned beneath the combined weight of Vale and two palace guards, still fought against the inevitable. His curses filled the courtyard, guttural and venomous, but his strength was gone. His wrists were forced into steel cuffs with a final metallic snap. The fight that had begun in arrogance ended in disgrace, his face pressed into the stone, his breathing ragged, and then, all at once, the chaos shifted. The focus turned from the man on the ground to the girl standing not 10 feet away. Lily Bennett, once a face on posters, her eyes staring out from news broadcasts, her name whispered in vigils, was alive. She stood trembling, her small hands gripping the sleeve of a palace guard, her hair disheveled, her cheeks streaked with tears. But she was safe. The courtyard fell into a hush as the police formed a protective ring, ushering her gently toward safety. Cameras clicked furiously, recording history as it unfolded. And then, through the gates, two figures pushed forward, her parents. They ran as though nothing else in the world existed. Her mother's sob tore through the air before her arms even wrapped around Lily, pulling her close in a desperate embrace that spoke of sleepless nights, endless prayers, and the unbearable fear of loss. Her father followed, collapsing to his knees, his arms encircling them both, his face buried in his daughter's hair. The crowd could not hold back its tears. Strangers wept openly, tourists lowered their cameras. Even hardened palace guards swallowed hard at the sight of a family reunited, the sound of Lily's mother whispering her name, over and over, as if afraid saying it too few times would make her vanish again, became the most sacred sound in the courtyard. Vale stood back, his chest still heaving from the fight, his coat heavy with blood. His arm throbbed where the blade had cut him, but the pain felt distant, unimportant. His eyes were fixed on the girl, safe in her parents' arms. For him, the mission was complete. Yet even in triumph, duty called. Senior officers closed in, their expressions caught between relief and reprimand. Vale had acted without orders, shattered centuries of strict protocol. The guard existed to maintain calm, to protect the image of the monarchy as much as its people. Breaking rank, confronting a threat without command, had consequences. Vale, one officer said quietly, his voice taut, "You'll have to answer for this." Vale nodded once. He knew it. The rules had been clear since the day he had sworn the oath. Yet as he stood there, watching Lily clutch her parents as though she would never let go again, he felt no regret. Because in his heart, he knew the truth. It wasn't the precision of his training or the weight of his uniform that had made him act. It wasn't ceremony or ritual that had guided his steps. It was something deeper, something primal. The heart of a father. Vale had no children of his own, but he had seen enough of war, enough of loss to understand. Once you truly see a child in danger, once you witness that silent plea for help, you can never unsee it. The choice becomes no choice at all. As the police led the predator away, cameras followed. Reporters shouted questions. Words like hero cut through the air. The world was already choosing its narrative. Vale wasn't just a soldier who broke protocol. He was the man who had saved a missing child, who had acted when hesitation might have meant tragedy. Back at the barracks, there would be inquiries. There would be hearings, paperwork, debates over honor and tradition. But the regiment, the men and women who had stood beside Vale for years, made their position clear in that moment. They stood taller, their shoulders squared, their eyes proud. Protocol was important, yes, but today instinct had saved a life, and no rule book could overshadow that truth. As the family was escorted away, Lily turned in her mother's arms. Her eyes found Vale once more. For a heartbeat, the noise of the courtyard faded. The sirens, the shouts, the chaos. All of it dissolved until only the two of them remained. Her lips trembled, her voice soft, but her words carried more weight than any metal could. "Thank you for believing me." Vale felt the world stop. His throat tightened, his injured arm suddenly heavy. His vision blurred not from pain but from the swell of emotion. Those words would etch themselves into his soul, carved deeper than any scar. When he returned to duty, when his coat was replaced, when the years moved on and the world forgot the headlines, he would still hear them. Always. And that was enough. Because, in the end, history would remember the red of his coat not for ceremony, not for pomp or ritual, but for the blood and sacrifice of a man who chose to see a child in danger, and could never look away.